受想行识亦复如是舍利子，是诸法空相不生不垢不净不增不减，是故空中无色。无受想行识，无言彼无色。身相为诸法，无眼见乃至无意识界，无明亦无明尽，乃至无想行识，无眼耳鼻舌身意，无色声香味触法，无眼见乃至无意识，无明无明尽，乃至无受想行识，无眼耳鼻舌身意，无色声香味触法，无眼见乃至无意识界，无明无明尽，乃至无受想行识，无怪无怪故有空，乃至无受想行识，无眼耳鼻舌身意，是故无受想行识，无眼耳鼻舌身意，无受想行识，无眼见乃至无意识，无明无明尽，乃至无受想行识，无眼耳鼻舌身意，无色声香味触法，至善世诸佛于般若波罗蜜多故，心无怪无怪故有空，无颠倒损失，无眼耳鼻舌身意，揭谛揭谛波罗僧揭谛波提萨婆愿下三藏诸烦恼愿得智慧真明了 是常行菩萨道。
念对希望做能归心念念念念真正爱言罗兰遍马杰那南心念念见念顿转在马阿那呀那念别多那南无归念那尊念容念顿长就真别做三年年年永年了，将在我感念年前这万中高万灭万灭灭，结万灭万大灭万灭万转灭，那年的面等见面这万年日见了。我为三年嘛那南半的那将的我在心面念端着日着那些年的年半的三年心的面念没法言这个南大心那就把就也能过了那面的那个你的呀mi
Thank you, the Chinese nun, I think Bhikshu, maybe Bhikshuni. Are you Bhikshuni? Bhikshuni, isn't it? Very good. So recite Heart Sutra in Chinese language. Thank you very much. Thereafter, after the Heart Sutra chanting, the last the part, very usually, Toksum Nyumo Sa shows. Toksum Nyumo Sa de Shirdu Namji Shirab Chita, Hagwar, and Tuyudo Shirab. 세국이 인도산에 실어 나온 바와쇼스. 대대비 주인님이 탈바트비야, 넬리트비야. 유무도 좀 세야게 실어 나와. 아니 말에 지나게 발전을 쌓아쇼스. 디주고데다 태고침 비추자니 대세저는 죽으쇼스. 배우도.
At the end of the Heart Sutra chanting in the Chinese tradition, there is a custom to chant a four-line prayer. And the words of those four lines are really very beautiful. For example, it reads that, may I be able to dispel the afflictions of the three poisons. And so that's the first line. And since the dispelling of the afflictions of the three poisons can only be effected through the application of wisdom that discriminates the individual characteristics of phenomena, and particularly a wisdom of emptiness. So the second line reads, may the light of wisdom shine bright. So that's the second line of aspiration, prayer. And the third line, in order for this light of wisdom to shine bright, all the obscurations that obstruct the expression of that light of wisdom needs to be eliminated. And therefore, the third line reads, may all obstacles be dispelled and removed. And finally, since the prayer is being made in the context of a Mahayana Buddhist practice, so the final line reads, may I be able to engage in the Bodhisattva's deeds. So it's a very beautiful prayer that is also very deeply inspiring.
I heard the first time this sort of Chinese is chanting Heart Sutra in this prayer in Singapore in I think late 60s. First time. Although I visit many temples in mainland China, 1954, 55, but I never heard this chanting. Only in Singapore, and then of course later in Taiwan. Really sort of wonderful sort of worship prayer. Very good. So when you chanting just one person, so I little sort of scare, may mistake, because my own experience. One time in Japan, one big gathering. So according to their program, one occasion, I sort of recite the Heart Sutra.
In Tibetan?
In Tibetan. Just one, me alone, because I'm lonely.
One person.
In the center, so they arrange, I go there and chanting. Then some mistake.
So because in the Heart Sutra there are a lot of phrases that are very similar to each other. So for a while I kept going around and around.
So because of that experience, when just one person lonely recite that, sometimes I feel, oh. So now today, what did it? Now these two texts, the oral transmission, I received the Shantadevas book from late Kunala Rinpoche, a great scholar, non-sectarian, and a great practitioner, and particularly the great practitioner of this Shantadevas book. So he often used to give teaching of this Shantadevas book. So when I received this teaching from him in 67 in Bodh Gaya, that really, as far as the practice of altruism is concerned, that's the turning point for my life. So very, very useful. Then the oral transmission of this Kamalashila's book is one Sakya Lama, great scholar as well as good practitioner, and he found awesome Dosa Shavana Nyabujari.
He had a rather long beard, kind of a goatee beard. He was very fond of it.
It seems like that. A very wonderful teacher. So I received. By just a casual talk, then he mentioned one occasion when he made a pilgrimage in Lhasa area and a Samya monastery. He found one Khampa Lama, come from Kham area, and with his own few students. So he giving some teaching in Samya monastery. Suppose the seat, the Shantarakshita seat.
Center.
So,
Shantarakshita center, no? On the very seat where Shantarakshita sat. So there was a small seat made from bricks.
Of course, not this kind of seat. Seat, very simple. Oh, one time I noticed I also have a very deep experience, sort of visit in southern Thailand. The late Buddhadasa, a great Thai Buddhist monk and good scholar, and he's the place where he gives teaching on the part of forest, and in the center, just one rock. He sit on that and give teaching. These things really reflect, I think, during Buddha's time. I think Buddha also made it like that. Not like this kind of seat. These are the Tibetans. Then Lama and the leader of the local area combined. So then sometimes these elaborate. That's a little bit nonsense. So in any way, the Rinpoche, that Satya Kempo, then he noticed the Lama give teaching to this text. So then he very much moved, and then immediately prostration and sit, listen to this oral transmission. So he just casually talked that story. Then I very much struck. Since these Kamalashila, of course, great scholar, and personally came to Tibet, and the rest of his life he spent in Tibet, as well as his own teacher Shantarakshita. So then I immediately decided, now I want to receive teaching from you. That's the first teaching from him, like that. So some significance, like that. Now, they should Kasati, Kamalash Mari, Kasa.
Shantidevas mom.
Shantidevas book. That Chanju is a pain. That pain is from Yare. Oh, now this Shantidevas book, 10 chapters. The first chapter, Pain Liu.
First chapter presents the benefits of bodhicitta, the awakening mind.
Then anybody Chanju Sim Sume, Yala to be choke, Shakbe Samde Sunche, Shakbe Liu. Then Chanju Sim Sume Liu.
So the second chapter presents actually the main preliminary practice to cultivating bodhicitta, generating awakening mind within the framework of the 7 limb practices, and within this, the limb of declaration and purification of negativity is presented in the second chapter, and this is then followed by chapter 3, which presents the procedure for upholding the awakening mind.
Oh yeah. Then Payu Liu, Shishing Liu, and Seve Liu, Zunju Liu, Samden Liu, Shir Liu, Moe Liu.
So then chapter 4 presents the cultivation of the faculty of heedfulness, application of heedfulness, and chapter 5, self-awareness or introspective awareness, and this is then followed by a chapter on the practice of forbearance or patience forbearance, and then this is followed by a chapter on the practices of joyous effort or joyful perseverance, and then the next chapter is the chapter on meditation or concentration, and then the 9th chapter is the chapter on wisdom.
Well,
and then the 10th the final chapter is the chapter on dedication.
As I mentioned yesterday, the Shantadas, the Inju Tindri, the Simji Yamno Yotengi, the Simji Chogasuna, Tene di Simji Lubja Chindu Sunat, the Chindula, and Jimbe, Perjindi, any Luton, the Longeton, the Gazaton, the Jetty, or Liu Yemen or Yeve into Sutmoson Che. Sudum Liu, Sutmoson Che, Sudum took the Payo the Shishin Yiviti, you will lost the so. Then a Sevelu, Junju, something to Shirabu, what is lost the so.
So, if you look at the basic structure of Shantideva's text, as explained before, it already presumes the practitioner to be someone who is generating awakening mind, bodhicitta, and on that basis proceeds on the path to enlightenment. So, beginning with the benefits and then generation of the bodhicitta, then Shantideva goes on to explain how such a practitioner implements the ideals of that bodhicitta into the practice within the framework of the 6 perfections. However, in presenting the practices of the Bodhisattva deeds, there is no explicit chapter on the first perfection, the perfection of giving, because the various elements of the perfection of giving, such as giving one's wealth, resources, teaching, and even one's entire existence and so on, are presented, spread throughout the text at various sections. So there is no separate chapter on the perfection of giving, and there is also no separate chapter on the perfection of morality. However, the 2 main faculties that are important for the application of the practice of, that are important for the observance of morality and perfection of morality are application of heedfulness and application of awareness or introspective awareness. And these 2 faculties are presented in 2 separate chapters. And then Shantideva presents the remaining perfections, each of them with a chapter. For example, the chapter on forbearance, the perfection of forbearance, perfection of joyful perseverance or joyous effort, and the perfection of meditation or concentration, and then perfection of wisdom. So yesterday we actually covered the benefits of the bodhicitta, awakening mind.
단다디 님부디디도와 장주성 세야디 직대 가담 고모주 송줄이야 아니 장주성 이게 있다고 그랬어 장주성 교리 계속나 차장 kho랑 거죠 딕직장 kho랑 거죠 딱 간다베 지금 가서 배 내가 직도 사수지 추저섬도 사수지.
So yesterday we actually covered the essence of the benefits of the bodhicitta, the awakening mind. And here to repeat this, and there is a Kadamba master's saying where the Kadamba masters say that for practitioners of Bodhisattva path, all the efforts should be really directed towards cultivating bodhicitta, the awakening mind. Because once you have the awakening mind, then it will take care of everything. It will take care of ensuring the accumulation of the merits and wisdom. It will take care of ensuring the removal of the obscurations. So in a sense, bodhicitta and awakening mind is like a single medicine for all illnesses. It is like the grand bridge under which all the streams of the river converge and flow through.
아니 주주는 소야기. 대외 경의 군세의 장주심이 다시는 되는 대원로 심시수시 기록요 순대한테 선편부도가
So also, if you reflect upon the following lines presented by Shantideva in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, it is very moving and very beneficial to one's heart. For example, he writes that therefore one should ride the horse of awakening mind that dispels all forms of weariness and discouragement, and one travels from a place of joy to a place of joy. And what intelligent person wouldn't wish to embark on such a journey? So therefore, the prayer, aspiration and prayers such as Shantideva's lines may, as long as a space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain and dispel the miseries of the world. So we can understand in this sense why making aspirations such as this, expressing such sentiments, is truly a source of real joy and happiness.
That makes sense.
So yesterday we read up to stanza 7, where we read, "The Lord of the sages who have been contemplating for many eons have seen this alone as a blessing by which joy is easily increased and immeasurable multitudes of beings are rescued." So we don't need to now read further.
That in Changju Sim to Dortu now, 15.
So then we will read from stanza 15, which explains, in brief, the awakening mind is known to be of two kinds. So it So we read that in brief, the awakening mind is known to be of two kinds, the aspiring awakening mind and the engaging awakening mind. And then we read, then how do we distinguish between the two? And then Shantideva explains in stanza 16, just as one perceives the difference between a person who yearns to travel and a traveler, so do the learned recognize the corresponding differences between those two awakening minds, two forms of awakening mind.
Chanju tam member sim given ni ani jabalo lobjang ma lobjang rong ta chisi juktum lang juktu ko lebje tebe da ka sore juktu ko lebje tebe ani jebe sim ba depende ne juksme insa juktu ko lebje tebe sa lebje na sa sa.
So there's distinctions between these two forms of awakening mind, the aspiring and engagement, is further explained in more clearly in Kamalashila's text, where Kamalashila states that whether the individual Bodhisattva practitioner is at that very instance actively engaged in a particular Bodhisattva deed or not, but from the point when the Bodhisattva has taken the Bodhisattva vows and committed to implementing these vows into one's practice, from that point onwards, then the Bodhisattva of that bodhicitta, the awakening mind of that person, has moved on to the next level, which is the engaging awakening mind. And this point is very clearly explained also in Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, Lamrim Chemo.
자자가 죽tum lang, that depends on any 강한 수도 심정 감 타이어도 되지 접게버디. 미도바의 습기서 습대 양다 lang줘봐. 대내 손도 니라고 밤에 주셔서 김이차가 되면서 남거냐 니 접도 줄 신. 다 죽tum lang. 엔다디 자바로 뭐서 별 럽심백거다. 무슨 두번이되게 무슨 뭔도 주심백거 매버체체. 니 투불로데 거를 준비 있나요? 뭔지 탐자다 편배왕게 손은 균 맞고 배워인 손도.
So we read in stanza 18 and 19, from the time that one adopts the awakening mind with an irreversible attitude for the sake of limited sentient beings, from that moment on, an uninterrupted stream of merit equal to the sky constantly arises even when one is asleep or distracted. So Shantideva was explaining here, from the very moment when you have taken the Bodhisattva vows, from that point onwards, even if the person is in a state where the actual aspiration to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings may not be manifestly obvious, but from that point onwards, even when the individual is in sleep, because of the force of the intention, and also because of the force of the nobility of the pledge that one has made, even in sleep, the merits of that individual practitioner will continue to increase and become enhanced.
So therefore, it is quite useful or helpful each morning, as soon as we wake up, for sincere practitioner, as soon as we wake up, remember, think about Buddha and the Buddha's teaching. The essential of the teaching is infinite altruism. So think that, and also if you have some knowledge, then think about interdependency, then make some kind of pledge. Rest of the day, no matter what my sort of activities, verbal action, physical action, essentially will not depart.
Essentially, whatever my activities may happen to be in that day, I will ensure that, my state of mind and my being is never divorced from that spirit that you have established.
So that's useful. Then go that way, week by week, month by month, year by year. Some change bound to happen, like our physical change. No force can stop changing of the body. So once we determined, then no force can stop. But if you do not determine, then physical in any way change. Mind, then
so without that kind of actual inner conscious kind of deliberation, and then even if one... So then the situation that a great master from Tashikil monastery has expressed in one of his experiential songs will be... his name was Shanglawa. What he has expressed in one of his experiential songs will become very true, where he says that if someone has failed to bring about inner transformation at the mental level, then may continue to recite mantras, many, many times. But in such situations, instead of seeing a reduction or wearing off of the afflictions, one will see the wearing off of one's nails by just counting the beads.
Oh yeah, that. Teacher. That's the one came to. 어디 야오시도 와대. 있어 좀 비디. 강시 대회 봉바다. 동네만데 대달라. 다 심제 냠타베 심제 때문에 그러면 봐. 대원도야. 동네기 대원도야. 대회 뚜뚜미시. 동네 면전나야. 동네기 줄로 뭐 버뚝지게 심제 대달래 편바치. 제바디 대화 군지 첨바다 동네 탐제 죄시진 랑을 자샤네 될 때네 아니 가소리 그게 편도샤 요되셔니 이무장 세자가 대단 기준 칼라요 텐데시장 칼라요 쏘는 텐당 칼라요.
So then, if we read from, say, for example, stanzas 29, it is really beautiful. So we read, he satisfies, this is stanza 29, referring to the Bodhicitta. It satisfied with all joys those who are starving for happiness and eliminates all the sorrows of those who are afflicted in many ways. So, because it talks about how through Bodhicitta, those sentient beings who are deprived of happiness and who, although do not wish to suffer but are fraught with sufferings, these sentient beings will be able to, the Bodhisattva through Bodhicitta will be able to satisfy them with happiness and also bring an end to their chain of suffering. So then Shantideva writes in the next stanza, it dispels delusion. Where else is there such a saint? Sorry, where else is there such a virtue? Where else is there such a friend? Where else is there such a merit?
That issue de sumsuruti. Kala simje tamba rinjindi geba teikula chanseshin. Kala nabaseja tendawa devenjungne tamba gyapsuchi.
So then we read the final stanza of the chapter, which reads in the following: I pay homage to the bodies of those in whom the precious jewel of the mind has arisen. I go for refuge to those who are treasures of joy, towards whom even an offense results in happiness.
다流通不出去。다真嘛流你吧，人之心的所有才吃的，养了对吧？다 차차와 라 소고티만 송해.
So from chapter 2, it begins the presentation of the 7 limb practices, beginning with a limb of making prostrations and paying homage. So we read, in order to adopt the jewel of the mind, I make offerings to the Tathagatas, to the sinless jewel of sublime Dharma, and to the children of the Buddhas who are oceans of excellent quality. So from this point onwards, Shantideva is presenting the practices of the 7 limbs.
다들 샥바지 대담 미다고 숨고도가 대셔로가 있었든.
So then the actual practice of declaration and purification of negativity is explained, say, for example, in stanza 27, where it begins with the reflection on impermanence.
처음에는 쇼바에 조선자의 전조선 투지 천번간으로 태무자의 소원이 나 수준 가렸으면 토모메된 고안에 처럼되어 신나도 다게 맞에 듣기면 기도자원이 있는데 띠무 주변에 다는데 제수이랑 관계가 너무 되는 통계는 삼바타고 그러나 샤. 다들은 뭐 지금 먹고 줬습니다. 지금 밤마다 라말이야. 때는 예바사십 되지 마체. 나 대ሹ데 순순이네 마. 된데겠다 디거디 에 교심 잡고거네 샤거베 중생 가르스럼나 나는 디거 맞아. 어떤 거 모르지. 지든 대령에다가 뉴에스 있겠어. 이대미로 지다데 자도 맞아 메디베이션 생각되는 마 전에 딱 메다고 고소도가.
So for example, we read in stanza 27 where Shantideva writes, with folded hands I beseech the fully awakened ones present in all directions and greatly compassionate bodhisattvas. And then he explains what he wishes to do after having invoked them. He writes, whatever non-virtues I, a brute, may have committed or caused others to commit in this life and others throughout the beginningless cycle of existence, and anything in which I have deludedly rejoiced, thereby harming myself, that transgression I confess, overcome by remorse. And then from stanza 30, particularly, it talks about the specific forms of negative karma, negative non-virtuous karma one may have accumulated in relation to the three jewels, one's parents, teachers, and so on. So these are declared and purified. And then from stanza 32, then Shantideva explains what would otherwise be the consequences if these negative karma are not declared and purified, on the basis of a deep sense of remorse for their committing. So then he writes, how shall I escape it? Rescue me quickly, may death not soon creep up on me before my vices have vanished. And then and
이대미로 치다한데 제가 맞아 매되면 나도 맨날 군지냐 로그처럼 이대미 자다되게 나가서 치워를 내봐 양거 넘치게 봐봐 다들 송도가.
So in stanza 33, Shantideva brings up the contemplation on death, and particularly pointing out two important facts of the phenomenon of death. One is its certainty that the death will occur, and then the second aspect is the unpredictability of its time when it might occur. So he writes, death does not differentiate between tasks done and undone. This traitor is not to be trusted by the healthy or the ill, for it is like an unexpected great thunderbolt.
가서 넘치게면 되죠.
This
추억에 넘치게면.
one.
단전에 탐지 볼때 차고 따게 되다 마시베 생각되는 마 치외스 쉐마도 생 관계자면 뱀바.
So from stanza 34 onwards, where we read, I have committed various vices for the sake of friends and enemies. This I have not recognized. Leaving everyone behind, I must pass away. So from this stanza onwards, Shantideva is presenting another important fact of the contemplation on death, which is that, at the point of death, nothing other than one's own Dhamma practice that will be of benefit, that will be of significance.
대양 루부드든 데레 차게 무 다지 되네 내가 지 소야 여제 이게 루부드든 데레 그러다 자 루부 거래 시다 샤고야 차연도 루부 샤베 니무디 루부디 지 튠진 차진디 이다 샤기보다 대장 다 쳐서.
So at the time of death, all the factors that are intimately connected with this present body that we possess, such as the money that we have, such as the house that we own, such as the various amenities and facilities that we possess, since all of these are really directly related to the sustenance of the physical body that we have, so at that time when we have to leave our body, there is no doubt, 100%, all these other factors that are associated with this body will also have to be left behind.
세상 가동 공에 숨줄이야 개부 제시 샤는조 정부 별거 샤는조 소다.
So therefore, there's a wonderful saying of the Kadamba masters where it states the following: at that time, a king will have to leave by leaving his kingdom behind. Even a beggar will have to leave, leaving his walking stick behind.
So, here are a few thousand people. It is almost certain, within 100 years, I think we all will go. It's certain. And that also, you see, nobody knows when it comes. Then when that death comes, all our possess, including our name, all then no longer any use. So as a Buddhist practitioner, what do you call legacy?
Legacy.
Legacy. One story. A few years ago, I think more than 10 years ago, I think, on New York Times columnist.
Columnist, yeah.
A
columnist, actually it was a few years ago.
One lady, the interview, and then she asked me about my legacy. Then I told her, as a Buddhist practitioner, I should not think about my legacy. The important is while I am alive. So my presence should be something useful to others. That's the sort of source of maximum joyful myself. That you feel something fulfillment of purpose of the life. So that is important. After my death, no concern. Should not feel importance of legacy. Then again she asked second time. I answer same way. Then short while, again asked. Then I lost my temper. Although I never use the word of shut up. Then after, I think 2 years, one or 2 years, again I met that lady. Then I laugh at her. Yes, we have that kind of incident there. Then she also laugh like that. Very good. So therefore, including your own name, no use. So important is while we are alive, this life, this brilliant smart brain should utilize for something purposeful, some meaningful, something benefit to others. That immediately bring deep satisfaction to yourself. Clear? So like that, that issue did what? 십삼지. 다는 매는 누구신도 년식군지 탁월자 속세바에 소화다 더니지구 영원조. 신지폰에 선발라 년지집에 시집에 제스서는 직전은 대한다게 마찬도. 공부 밤이 다게니 집은 닌저 마찬네 미다 천대 체다도 디고망고 여와도.
So, and then we read in stanza 40 the following: although lying here on a bed and relying on relatives, I alone have to bear the experience of being cut off from my life force. For a person seized by the messengers of death, what good is a relative and what good is a friend? At that time, merit alone is a protection, and I have not applied myself to it. And then we read, O protectors, I, negligent and unaware of the danger, have acquired many vices out of attachment to this transient life.
No, yeah. That is what. 와당년은 십시치로하다. 신지폰에 진지의 시수전이 송주지. 지진 내게 태교가 럽도냠다 매지고 수신지진 들려다 레버력적으로 체인주시 대셔템배 밑에는 초시 잡다 초시 때문에 되는 것도 이문요. 내가 깨우면이나 대서다게 치들차.
And then we will read stanza of 44 and 45. 44 up to 46. So we read, how much more is one overpowered by the horrifying appearances of the messengers of death, as one is consumed by the fever of terror and smeared with a mass of waste. Then he writes, with distressed glances, I seek protection in the four directions. Which good person will be my protection from this great fear? Seeing the four directions devoid of protection, I return to confusion. What shall I do in that state of great fear? So this is then followed by the presentation of taking refuge in the three jewels. So because one's practice of declaration and purification must be present with the four powers, and the first is one of the powers is the power of the support, and for this taking refuge is an integral part. So with that, we finish the second chapter, the chapter on declaration and purification. So chapter 3 So chapter 3, which is the adopting the awakening mind, opens with the practice of the limb of rejoicing. So here it involves a rejoicing in the cause, in the actual fruits, which is the happiness of others and oneself, and also rejoicing in the causes and conditions of the fruit, which are the virtuous deeds. Then the remaining limbs, requesting the Buddhas to turn the wheel of the Dharma and appealing them not to enter into final nirvana, are presented. Which is then followed by the limb of dedication. So then we will read from stanza 12, where Shantideva writes, "For the sake of all beings, I have made this body, I've offered this body. Let them continually beat it, revile it, and cover it with filth. Let them play with my body, let them laugh at it and ridicule it. What does it matter to me? I've offered my body to them. Let them have me perform deeds that are conducive to their happiness. Whoever resorts to me, may it never be in vain." So up to this point, in the text, Shantideva has explained the need to cultivate forbearance in the face of harms and sufferings created by other sentient beings. And so in that sense, the practices are actually common with non-Bodhisattvas, such as the disciples and so on, where even the disciples and the Pratyaga Buddhas, the self-enlightened ones, are capable of cultivating forbearance based upon compassion for other sentient beings. And however, since the practices here are presented in the context of a Bodhisattva practitioner, it is not enough to simply adopt and apply forbearance, but rather one needs to actively engage in helping others to express compassion in a more active form. So from stanza 17 onwards, we read that, for example, Shantideva writes, "May I be a protector for those who are without protectors, a guide."
18.
이진아 줍든르샤.
가.
이진아 줍든르샤.
가.
이진아 줍든르샤.
줍든에.
So, may I be a protector for those who are without protectors, a guide for travelers, and a boat, a bridge, and a ship for those who wish to cross over. May I be a lamp for those who seek light, a bed for those who seek rest, and may I be a servant for all beings who desire servant. And then in stanza... So these sentiments are very similar to the prayers of the Saint Francis of Assisi. And then he writes, may I be a lamp for those who seek light, a bed for to all sentient beings, may I be a wish-fulfilling gem, a vase of good fortune, an efficacious mantra, a great medication, a wish-fulfilling tree, and a wish-granting cow. And then a very important stanza comes up where he writes that, this is in stanza 20, just as earth and the other elements are useful or useful in various ways to innumerable sentient beings dwelling throughout infinite space, so may I be in various ways a source of life for the sentient beings present throughout space until they are all liberated. So in other words, in these lines, Shantideva is presenting the powerful sentiment where the Bodhisattva practitioner is making the determination that may I be a source of benefit alone and happiness for all beings, and that's the sentiment that is being cultivated. So, the similar sentiments are also expressed by Nagarjuna in his precious garland, where he says that just like the elements of earth, water, fire, and so on, may all beings, may I be a factor that can be utilized and be of benefit to all sentient beings, and may they utilize it at their will in whatever way they wish. And then he says that may I therefore offer whatever happiness I possess to others and virtue, and may all the sufferings and their causes that other sentient beings possess come to realize upon me. So this here then having proceeded by engaging in the practices of the seven limb, then the actual ceremony of upholding the bodhicitta, the awakening mind, is presented. So these are the two, this is presented in the two stanzas, stanza 22 and 23, so where we read, just as the Sugatas of old adopted the awakening mind, and just as they properly conform to the practices of the Bodhisattvas, so I myself shall generate the awakening mind for the sake of the world, and so I myself shall properly engage in those practices.
로메 차트를 폰고래 지더든지 녀보다 대신 지식 따 때네 전주성도 달라졌어. 다 전주성도 큰지지 아래. 진짜가 쪼게 거야. 좀전 가야 돼서 라바이나. 쪼게가 내도 그래야 돼서 라바이나. 저 치다는 좀 제베 뒤지 쳐진 디노. 저 의어서 미세된 디노 다시서 마송이.
And then we read, for example, in stanza 24, upon gladly adopting the awakening mind in this way, an intelligent person should thus nurture the mind in order to fulfill his wish. So from then onwards, the practices of cultivating a sense of rejoice in having generated the mind are explained, and the key point is raised in stanza 27 when Shantideva writes, "Just as a blind man might find a jewel among heaps of rubbish, so this awakening mind has somehow arisen in me." So cultivating a true sense of rejoice. And then, so the question may be raised, so what exactly is this awakening mind which gives, which is worthy to be, which is something that one needs to feel a tremendous sense of joy for having generated it, and what are its benefits, what is the characteristics of this mind? And then Shantideva writes, it is the supreme medicine that elevates the illness of the world. It is the tree of rest. So we read in stanza 29, it is the supreme medicine that elevates the illness of the world. It is the tree of rest for so it's stanza 28, it is the elixir of life produced to vanquish death in the world. It is an inexhaustible treasure, eliminating the poverty of the world. So the first line, it is the elixir of life produced to vanquish death in the world, can be understood at two levels. From the point of view of the attainment of ultimate liberation, then we can understand this line to say that given that bodhicitta, the awakening mind, is the principal factor that leads to the attainment of final Buddhahood, which is the state, which is the epitome of immortality, a state of immortality, a state beyond death. So we can, this is in one way we can read it, but on a mundane level, we can also read this line. So for example, when you uphold bodhicitta, you generate good-heartedness, warm-heartedness, and altruism, altruistic state of mind. And when you have altruistic state of mind, it creates a sense of calmness within you, a sense of settledness and sense of calmness and peace of mind. When the peace of mind arises, it ensures the smooth flowing of the various energies and the elements within your body, which then ensures a greater health. So in this way, we can say that the cultivation of bodhicitta, even from a mundane point of view, is an elixir for longevity, and also in terms of the Buddhists tend to do longevity practices, rituals. So in actual fact, the most effective longevity practice really is the practice of bodhicitta, the practice of awakening mind. So in contrast, if someone lives constantly with an agitated state of mind, with a totally restless, unsettled state of mind, and then continuously resort to medication, trying to keep his or her health, that kind of approach may not be that effective. In contrast, if someone has a really altruistic heart, then that creates a sense of peace, inner peace, and settledness and calmness, which then ensures a much better, better basis for physical health. In fact, in that case, even if you don't take a lot of medications, in fact, your longevity might be better ensured. So in that sense, truly, bodhicitta is an elixir of immortality.
가당 고모스 송주나 디고도와 알아 섬전을 펴봐 버시직다 성당 미유다샤 된데 연데 치워가는 치워셔 나와가는 나와셔 성당도 와 지스는 남자스 매서 첩해지 요새
So
저 답에 시민용에서 남자 저저는 치료 쉬우시던 데비는 남자 그저 집에 저기 배지심 좋은 거래 쌤뭐지 좋은 거래 남자 맵시 대대는 치워가는 치워셔 나와가는 나와셔 간다 지스 나가 마세가 빨리 펜버트야 이 삼시 대비는 로고로스도 와 패스센서
So, so in this respect, then we can truly understand the kind of the significance of the sayings of the Kadamba masters, where Kadambas, because these are practitioners whose entire being is dedicated to bringing about the realization of their ideal, altruistic ideal of bringing benefit to others, helping other sentient beings. So to that end, Kadamba masters even go to the extent of making aspirational prayers, saying that, to that end, if my death is the best factor, may death befall upon me. To that end, may illness is the best way, may illness befall upon me. So what this suggests is that these are beings whose heart is totally open and dedicated to the pursuit of others' well-being, so that there is no fear, there is no anxiety in them. And when there is no anxiety, they are able to really accept everything that comes in their way. In contrast, if someone is gripped with anxiety and fear of death, then on that, motivated by that, even if the person performs a lot of longevity rituals, this is not going to help, because the anxiety and fear really creates an agitated state of mind which will undermine one's health. So you can see when one pursues the altruistic ideal, then truly a sense of courage arises, a sense of freedom from fear and anxiety. They're kind of a state of carefree kind of attitude, a courageous mind arises.
의사의 미세대한 디노스 차진이 진배 롱주 팀기 됐어. 진배당은 롱주 패야지. 나가던 신기 서버 상고치 대비나 대지 그다음에 서버게 부채 왕청부채는 미 과는 게 버튼에 배지 도정도 가버려.第一点 믹스리 서버게 부채 밀어 왕유시 장왕시는 더 민규도도 되거다. corruption 사진에 이거도가. that part 믹스시. 뒤에 그게도가 short-sighted, temporary. 딱 뭐다 다내게 변한 미 러시아 생애디 소소 상반 남다 시대다. 미끌을 자우쳐 그래. 미끌을 자우쳐나? 러시아에 이거 봐. 저 대인들 그 어서 미세대한 디노 스페셜리 내가 더도 가만히 있네. 삼아상고 되기 의외 때문에 세야 펜스도 와. 펜스로 봐. 저 내로 시집에 매지 저게 디노스. 나도 되게 쉽지 그러지. 가나 샘기우여나 류때고 내매요. 내 좋아이네 요차야. 대신도 내 류를 내 좋아이네 샘기 동련 자체 되게 상담이나 내디 코치 류소 등에 연하야 센서로 이츠보여야. 용서. 그래서 이제 저내로 시집에 매지 저게 디노 소시.
So we read in stanza 28, it is an inexhaustible treasure eliminating the poverty of the world. So again here, although in the general Buddhist teachings, it is stated that the practice of generosity and giving leads to wealth and resources in future life, and practice of morality leads to attainment of favorable rebirth. But here, Shantideva is pointing out that in fact, the practice of bodhicitta, the awakening mind, can also be a source of relieving of poverty. So, for example, if someone upholds a truly compassionate and altruistic heart, then that person, creates, and that person is able to really reach out to, everyone. That person is also able to create a very friendly and peaceful and joyful atmosphere around it, which makes the interaction with others much more smooth, and therefore the person is also likely to be of benefit to others, but also receive benefit from others. On the contrary, although it is possible or conceivable in some situations, although one may harbor really kind of exploitative intention and motivation, but because that individual happened to have a lot of power, sometimes as a result of this, the person may receive material gifts and so on from others, but these kind of resources and the gifts that you receive are very temporary, very short-sighted, and there is no real kind of solid basis for this. So except for that, generally it is...
I think generally nobody sort of accepts that is something right. So we call corruption. Bully on other and bring fear on other. Then through that way get some money. That's a corruption, isn't it? So the proper thing is you remain warm-hearted person and contented. Then, and anyway, you will find some money from here, from there. Okay. So the positive 야 가다 뵙기 시시래. 가다 뵙기 시시. 껴보시 슈슈거래. 또 찾아서 껴보시지. 세상에 저한테 차진 튼지로 켜내면 된다. 지금 그때 차진을 가게 누가 왔어. 시주산에 나 섬제 켜내면서 나 총시 된다는 게 매상월로 내 조부 인스. 하고는 전대지는 게 조부 인스. 나 그도 거래 디디 제일스러. 디어도 와.
So this reminds me of again a story of a Kadampa master who was a hermit and of course had nothing in his at his hermitage. So one day someone came by and said, look, you have really virtually nothing here. This is such a pathetic state, why are you living like this? And the hermit said, no, I don't have to worry, I have nothing around, but all the people down in the town, village there, they're all my friends, they all like me, and also, these includes some more wealthy families as well. So if I need anything, I just have to ask. So to continue the translation, His Holiness was saying that in contrast, if the individual really maintains a truly altruistic heart that is open to all others, then it creates a kind of a joyful state of mind, and this joyful state of mind brings about a calmness and peace within, and this peace then creates the basis for a more healthy body, and so when you have this healthy constitution, then there is less possibility of sickness striking you, and even if sickness strikes you, the chances are that you will be able to heal the illness much more fast. So therefore, Shantideva says that he says that it is the supreme medicine that elevates the illness of the world. So even if one is experiencing a kind of quite an acute illness, if the individual practitioner is able to uphold bodhicitta in his or her mind, then although at the physical level, the pain and so on might be there, but at the mental level, if the practitioner is able to utilize that opportunity, say for example by engaging in the practice of tonglen, giving and taking upon oneself others' suffering, then you can feel that this fact of me having suffering this illness is really been made purposeful. So you can feel, although at the physical level there might be pain and so on, but at the mental level there will be a sense of fulfillment, there will be a sense of satisfaction. So you can really see how, in this sense, the practice of bodhicitta truly is medicine.
Silam chamshi dubai, röyen su junshin, changju sama. Shi lai tang boba. Zute, gyagana shi dungegi, nyandegi ri, sibo kwaya dungegi, dungegi dungegi, dendegi dungegi da, nyandegi ri. Re di ina ya, ji gongbay na li ya, rang chowa di, 다 되게 다르 치면 사소 중 전부터 나가시도 다와요. 순자 빠도 남아는 시야쇼 삼바지 삼로 땅체. 된데가 섬다 제제. 로지 딤셰. 대여의 인도산에 랑델라 깨가는시 동에 가르치네. 디 뜨거지게 찍다 마스에서 진짜 배지 많이 와서 그렇지. 연구를 보다 영서를 봐. 된데 인도산에 실은 15과에 나리야 다다 랭윤기 상황전 그게 네 랭윤기 왕기 雕랑지 도스 대대비 그도 깨가는시 동네 용대뒤 시 셈나로리야 시부지 동네 마요야 그래서 동네기 차를 이렇게 모동야게 시디우서 쳐도 그래도 와 실은 참시 두고요 로행에서 주시.
So we read in stanza 29, the second part, it is the tree of rest for beings exhausted from wandering on the pathways of cyclic existence. So this is particularly a reference to bodhisattvas on the early stages of the path. These are bodhisattvas who are actually ordinary beings who are still, trapped in the cycle of existence, karmically conditioned. So as part of their being in this karmically conditioned cyclic existence, they will undergo the typical sufferings of birth, aging, death, and sickness, and so on. So, however, as explained before, these are individuals who have totally dedicated their entire being for bringing about the welfare of other sentient beings, as expressed in the sentiments earlier by Shantideva, that may I be just like an earth element, water element, and so on, be of benefit that can be utilized by all others. So since these are beings who have dedicated themselves in this kind of manner, even when they undergo the sufferings which are part of being in the cyclic existence, because of their sense of courage, and also because of this lack of anxiety and fear, so it's because of the bodhicitta, the awakening mind, it provides them kind of a respite, kind of a cooling shade to take the intensity off from the acuteness of the actual sufferings that they may experience in samsara.
Of course, you say, I never claim I have the full qualified sort of bodhicitta, of course, but I am one admirer of bodhicitta and make some sort of effort to familiarize. So according to my own sort of experience, now these are, I think, very, very true. Then, now this is not a political sort of statement or political motivation, but simply fact. Recent, the 10th March sort of crisis has happened. The 10th March afternoon, I received information from Lhasa. Now people, monks or some other people, now carrying some demonstrations started. Then immediately I got this sort of feeling of 10th March 1959. It's a lot of sort of worry, anxiety, and fear. So similar experience happened this time also. And about next more than 1 month, it remained like that. And also feeling of helplessness. And meantime, in my daily sort of meditation, of course, the Tonglen, they can give. Some of those is Chinese, communist, who are making some of these decisions, visualize with these people, and take their hatred, their anger, their fear, and give tolerance, love, compassion. Of course, that kind of visualization. In a practical level, no help. Just the imagination. So in a way, silly. But for practitioner, immense benefit. That, in spite of the intellectual level, intelligence level, there's a lot of worry, a lot of anxieties, a lot of and sort of hopes and doubts like that.
Uncertainties.
Uncertainty. But deeper, I think the emotional level, still quite calm. So these are really very, very helpful to maintain deep insight, calmness. So one immediate practical benefit is, since that March, about over 1 month, intelligence level, a lot of worry, but my sleep never disturbed. So that's practical benefit. So therefore, I can share with you, if you practice the altruism as much as you can, you get yourself a maximum benefit. So that's important to know. But otherwise, people get the impression, practice of altruism is something good for other. For myself, selfish is better. That kind of attitude, I think, is wrong. I often used to tell people, by nature, we are selfish. It is the basis of our survival. But that selfish should be wise selfish rather than foolish selfish. So that's important. Now the text really give us certain conviction. The wise selfish is truly benefit, not only reaching Buddhahood or better life next time,
life.
but even day-to-day's life happier. Clear? That. Sim 참시 두바이 드라이면서 주신. 저 참시 년도에 저시 지디. 다 삼바디 싫어 그 저도 셔 신주잖아요. 그래서 자본금한테 귤라면 중국도 와서 가래. 리벤내가 따라 캐버를 맞아놨어. 소문은 시체니. 간다. 템베 삼바디 말로 접대게 지고 그러면 와. 다 소다 소와다 지다 자다 참바다 지데 얘는 시야지 나가서 시들 저기 리벤내 지중들이 셴바제니 얘는 강락 강도 밀어 패드줘야지 송도 와. 그래서 이제 인도잖아요. 저 탐생 년도에 저 집에 지디 내가 가시고 그러면 미즈다가나 그러나 심지어 되죠 죽지사로 심지어 되지 주는 난 그러나 심지어 되죠 죽지사 되기 커도 그러나 미지 나가 놓아대버지야 넘규시야 참에 미 커규키는 로댕에 지리야 쪄쪄 제베 참에 강다 커도 다 라자 가리버지리 지야지 그러나 까물은 내가 소사지 취기도는 주내야 돼. 셜은 내가 소사지 까물은 내야 되거든요. 그 주는 발로. 다 강다 찍다 가서 우리 그게 꽃하다. 강다 찍 펴버려야지. 엔데네 최선에 랑도는 내 때니 문돌 거야. 아니 다 가사를 넣어야 돼. 대콘 랜드는 머리베 랑도 네 균제기 땡중고 타네 람때니 그래서 랜드는 보면 머리고 떠디 못 돌는 거야. 때에다가 땡중고 대콘이 셰베 관에 대코너니를 보면 머리고 쓰니 탈발한 거야. 잠바든 이제 싸워체에 저주고 쓴게 람때니 탐제체에 살는 거야. 이게 소소 무버르디 저주고 쓴 들어봐. 펜션 들어봐. 그래서 이 인도산에 저 탐제 년도래 저렇지 지딩이 딩 년도 써야 돼. 년도 찍어래 고고가 있다. 다시 한번 고쳐보면 쓴 게. 얘는 르뉴무 동세에 심진다와 샤와이. 심을 뭐지버지 용데베 또로 찍대. 랑제버지 진진기 뚜용도가. 다들 인도 현제버지 로 심진다와 샤르 유두자네. 뇽단 레뉴니기 뇽모르데 뇽모와 지금 뭐지버지 돼야. 즉 투돼야 돼. 대단세 돼야지. 자들이 인도산에 저녁 동서에 심진다와 샤와이. 저 미시르르다 진진이 뭐 참고 있어. 다 되게 싸워대 저거요래. 저녁 동서에서 윤주 세야. 저 미시르르다 세대 시주를 자네. 진진이 뭐 참고 있어. 진리를 자 저거요래. 이내 태도에 용모마 한도 빼다 즉 동영원 시대야. 뭐지부지야. 뭐시부지야. 디리세야. 저 미시르르다 지지님을 처음 있을 때 되게 차도 이나야 그저그 셈 시류 여봐이나 철도 남지기 싫어 상도 야가 몰라 셈 투대봐이나 철도 남지기 싫어 로스도 대봐 통에 째도야 믿어와 밀산나 저거 중에 뭘 흘르세제 닝제 어스센은 소도 되고 소도 최체이고 투제 공부 실세 때에는 죽었을 때 마태비제 죽었을 때 이제 그여서야 루라는 지금 뭐야 그때야 그때 이도 저 미시르르다 지지님은 전부 나 너도나 담주 오면 수발래 말이니 무충이 나 좀된데 역시 그는 공 제단지부터 이디기 다 지금 근주 땡주스네 중문고 뒤에 다 땡부디 다그 시주 자주 좀 싫어고 좋아도서 따뜻 수고요 그래서 들으셔
So we read in stanza 30, it is the universal bridge for all travelers on their crossing over miserable states of existence. So here, one of the key points being made here is that it is bodhicitta, it is generation of bodhicitta, particularly complemented with a factor of wisdom, and that will help in bringing about others' welfare. So therefore, a Bodhisattva practitioner needs to have a kind of the wisdom as well. For example, Maitreya explains in his Uttara Tantra Sublime Continuum, where he stressed the importance on the part of the Bodhisattva practitioner to gain mastery over all forms of knowledge. Particularly, he lists the 5 fields of knowledge. And the point being made here is that the Bodhisattva, in order to bring about others' welfare, needs to have the factor of wisdom so that he or she is able to recognize and understand what may be the most immediate needs and what is the most appropriate way in which he or she can help other sentient beings. And when we talk about other sentient beings, we have to also understand it's not just an ideal, but also one needs to apply immediate practical assistance as well. For example, when you look at the Bodhisattva's morality, there are 3 levels of 3 aspects of morality, and the third one is the morality of bringing about others' welfare or working for others' welfare. in one of the texts, there are 11 practical helps listed. And these include, for example, these includes, for example, if someone is lost, and looking for a direction, you should provide immediate assistance to help them with the direction. If you see someone having difficulty walking and just leaning heavily on a walking stick, then you need to help that person to provide a support. And if you find, for example, however, you do need to be mindful. Sometimes there are elderly people who actually feel offended when you offer to help. So in those cases, you have to be a bit more mindful and be more wise. And then if necessary, just you can watch that person from a distance. And then, if you have come across animals that are kind of land animals that are, being drowning in the water, you help them get out. If it is a water-based, kind of a waterborne animal that has been accidentally found itself on the dry land, you should help them put back in the water. So these are the immediate practical assistance that one needs to do. Of course, at a deeper level, the key and benefit that one brings to other sentient beings is to help bring about in their mind the wisdom that understands the norms of what is to be adopted and what is to be abstained. In this way, teaching the Dharma and presenting the truth of the Dharma. So here, for example, yesterday we talked about the understanding of the principle of dependent origination at two levels, in terms of cause and effect, and in terms of dependent designation, which is the ultimate nature of reality, and how these two levels of understanding correspond to the removal of two levels of ignorance. Ignorance pertaining to the law of karma, and ignorance pertaining to the ultimate nature of reality. So depending upon the need of the practitioner, of the person, one needs to provide the wisdom of understanding the dependent origination of law of cause and effect, and thus helping other sentient beings to remove the ignorance pertaining to the law of karma, and thereby establishing the basis for attaining future rebirth, favorable rebirth. And when it is possible, one should bring the wisdom of dependent origination in terms of emptiness, thereby helping other sentient beings to eliminate and overcome and eliminate ignorance pertaining to the ultimate nature of reality, thereby establishing the basis for the attainment of liberation, freedom from cyclic existence. And where appropriate and possible, one should present to the others the practices and ideals of bodhicitta, rooted in loving kindness and compassion, thereby enabling others to establish the basis for the attainment of final Buddhahood. So in this way, one will be able to help other sentient beings, and so that in brief, the application of wisdom in one's implementation of the Bodhisattva ideal in actual practice is very important, because here it is very important to have a more settled and less agitated states of mind for the faculty of wisdom to fully function and operate. So even in the mundane context, for example, if you really want to get back at someone, say for example someone that you do not like, if you try to retaliate in an agitated state of mind, totally angry and disturbed, then your countermeasure against that individual will not work, because even if you try to hit, if you're too disturbed, emotionally disturbed, you may not be able to hit the person at the right spot where you want. On the other hand, if you keep a calm mind and with deliberation, using gentle words, saying, "Oh, you poor thing," but you can calculate, and then with a very calm presence of mind, you can actually hit the target much more effectively. So even in the mundane context, we can see how the less agitated mind allows for a greater functioning of your intelligence, and the agitated mind really totally undermines any.
되게 중심이 되죠. 서울하고 건조기에 괜찮게 모습이 차고야고 야래. 당시도 전에 패지 당시 소야 카우치거래. 걔나 농라는 배투로 왔어. 자사가 자꾸지도 하 애디 수강하는 말에 패지 수강하는 데 걔 되게 답자 이랬는데 걔 농라죠.
This reminds me of a story, and the story relates to a principal teacher of Geshe Sopala, whose name was Geshe Thapke. And Geshe Thapke was really reputed to be a formidable scholar, and who, when he sits down to respond, and it was very difficult for the debaters who were opening in a line of kind of debate, it was very difficult for them to ever find any weak spots in his positions. However, it was a common knowledge that once Geshe Thapke becomes agitated and gets angry, and then he sort of says all sorts of things. So it was said that when he was sitting down for these major debates, there was particularly one Geshe scholar who would make sure that at the beginning, instead of actually presenting the actual debate, they would tease him really badly so that he loses his temper, and then they will start attacking. So, and then we read in the text here, in stanza 31, it is the great sun dispelling, it is the rising moon of the mind that soothes the mental afflictions of the world. So this is very true, because when your mind is in an agitated state, it brings in agony, whereas bodhicitta, because it immediately brings in a sense of calmness and peace, it acts like a kind of a cooling rays of a moon. And then, so this deals with, although in the text it talks about afflictions, but it may also refer to any form of disturbed states of mind which are being calmed. And then in the stanza 31 we read, it is the great sun dispelling the darkness of the world's ignorance. It is the fresh butter formed from churning the milk of dharma. So the first line in stanza 31 relates to the Bodhisattva being the important factor that enables the practitioner to also overcome subtle obscurations to knowledge as well. And the next line, the second part of that stanza really captures the essence of what Shantideva is saying. And here he says that bodhicitta is the essence, it's like the butter that has been churned out of milk. So it is the essence of all the teachings of the Buddha. So the Buddha, for the benefit of his followers, future followers, have presented many teachings that are enshrined in Kangyur, the canonical collection of the sacred words. And then in the Tibetan tradition, we also have the Tengyur, the commentarial collection. So the essence of all of these, in the fashion of butter that has been churned out of the milk, really is the practice of bodhicitta.
Oh yeah. That's soon.
So with that, we finish the reading of the chapter on upholding bodhicitta or awakening mind. So the next chapter is the chapter on heedfulness.
And 진습에 도발나야 생긴데 진습에 답지로야 생긴데 지금 소수 지 가서 그게 법주 잡아 가는 거 레버
건실을 내고 마다고 되는 돈을 뒤지지. 다 산재나도 대해서 싫어 좀도 강다시. 등진기가 다다고 텔레쇼도 지시. 진짜 독해 첨부지. 아니 러지디. 러고리 소리.
So the stanza opens with the emphasis on the need to really uphold the vows that one has committed to upholding on the basis of generating the awakening mind. So Shantideva writes, thus, upon firmly adopting the awakening mind, a child of the conquerors should always vigilantly strive not to neglect his training. So here, Shantideva is emphasizing the point that once the Bodhisattva has generated the awakening mind, and on that basis taken the Bodhisattva vows and committed himself or herself into engaging in the Bodhisattva practices, it is important to constantly maintain the heedfulness so that one upholds these vows. And then he writes, although one has made a commitment, it is appropriate to reconsider whether or not to do that which has been rashly undertaken and which has not been well considered. So here, Shantideva is explaining the importance of a sense of seriousness on the part of the practitioner to one's commitment to these bodhisattva practices. And he writes, but shall I discard that which has been examined by the sagacious Buddhas and their children, as well as by myself according to the best of my abilities?
나중에 저거 중립이지. 대대 제대로 탐제신. 나그 그게 두버차. 되네. somebody 마셔나. 원에 오도 좋아요. 심지어 탐제 펜제베 상제 장면 대주죠. 나는 랑게 예배대 소유주 뭐주도. 뒤 더동 대신 다잖아. 양도 대신데 년중에도 치워서 쏟다 디디기. 아니 동네 용과야 저그래. 나한테 내 인도잖아요. 디를 수시로 들어가서 철도 남지게 싫어부터 하네. 나 죽어야 돼. 근데 이 다리 밀을 터버리시다 자체 몰래. 미를 좀 터버리 이니 추마서 저거래. 진짜 대저 주신이야 송도와.
So then we will read from stanza 12 where Shantideva writes, therefore I should respectfully act in accordance with my commitment. If I do not make an effort now, I shall go from lower to lower states. Innumerable Buddhas have gone by seeking out every sentient being, but through my own fault I have not come into the domain of their cure. If I remain like this as I am now, I will repeatedly come to the miserable states of existence, illness, death, amputation, destructions, and the like. So here Shantideva was explaining what could be the implications of failing to live up to the commitment that one has made on the basis of having taken the Bodhisattva vows. And then Shantideva goes on to present the practices of contemplating the recognition of the preciousness of the human existence and the opportunity it accords us as a practitioner.
나중에 아들이 이러와 베지디 도둑송을 내려래 베지 지미 제한이고 지미링베다 세 도유제 지미 제한이고 베지송을 임베 제니 탄조 미르 rumbuchi sad 양 미르 출부치 사지 내 사람 탐벌대 다 미르 rumbuchi 저거를 마도 미르 출부치 지겨 말이지 때문에 그러다 미 남주 전주거고 즉 상로 먹고 코트야 또서 먹고 치트야 디 녀몽배 차기는 담배이나 랑풍 셴풍 차도 메대고 포를 내는 동에 이렇게 작도 근데 전주를 깨야 돼요. 내가 너도 보도 소만 오다. 다들 밀리 출부치에 슬라봤다. 다미 남주 데이터네 샴페인으로 샹을 차와면시야. 딘데기 털이야다 가소리 그렇지 딘데식 미지자리에는 밀루 rumbu치에서 참 그래서 딘데 이르자는 다 밀루 출부시 차야 돼 나 가서 밀루 출부시 마셔봐 밀루 rumbu치 시켜야 돼 땅아도 매주 치고 요래 난 밀루 출부시 차야 돼 당도라는 출부시 차야 돼 이거 말해 돼딱 가다 미시베 왕 유목 왕 이거 요래 딘데 이르자는 유목이 님이 삼고 말해 다 쇼니 싹 그래서 쇼로가 싹 깨버리
So in this context, it is helpful to reflect upon 2 ways of looking at human existence that has been suggested by, for example, in the writings of Jigme Gyaltsen Nyulku, where he says that one can relate to the human existence as if it is a precious human existence, like a jewel, or one can relate to human existence as a source of all problem and downfall. So, for example, if one utilizes the human existence that is endowed with tremendous amount of mental potential, power of thought, power of imagination, and also creativity, if we utilize all of these facilities and allow them to be dictated by afflictions, then all of these facilities will really become factors for creating more pain and suffering, one's own downfall and also downfall of other sentient beings. In contrast, then the animal forms of life may be in fact more desirable because their capacity to bring about suffering on others is much more limited, given the kind of mental and kind of facilities they possess. So animals have a much more simple life, which are concerned more about their immediate survival. In contrast, human beings, because of the brain that we possess and the intelligence faculties that we have, when these fall under the dictates of afflictions, they can be a source of tremendous suffering and downfall for others. So in this, if we utilize them in this manner, then our human existence becomes a great source of downfall and problem. On the other hand, if we utilize human existence in the right way, all the facilities that we possess, our mental capacities and so on, in a meaningful way, then truly our existence becomes a precious human existence. So this is really a very helpful way of looking at this. And what could potentially make human existence a grave source of downfall and problem is the factor of the afflictions. So therefore, one needs to reflect upon the destructive nature of the afflictions. So in Shantideva's text here, he then explains the importance of reflecting upon the destructiveness of these afflictions. So we read from stanza 28, for example, enemies such as craving and hatred are without arms, legs, and so on. They are neither courageous nor wise. How is it that they have enslaved me? So from here, Shantideva is explaining the destructive power of the afflictions. So in stanza 29, for example, we read, "Stationed in my mind, they ruin me. while remaining well established themselves, and yet I do not get angry at my forbearance with this shameful and improper situation. So here Shantideva was explaining the way in which they wreak havoc within us. So if you compare the internal enemy of these afflictions with the external enemy, with relation to external enemy, we can take measures. For example, we can escape from them. We can put barricades that can protect us. However, the internal enemies of these afflictions, they reside within us, so we cannot escape from them. And furthermore, Shantideva explains that they wreak havoc at will, because we, instead of distancing ourselves from them, we in fact willingly kind of embrace them. For example, when anger arises in us, we feel as if it is, there is a protector in me. They are coming, it is my protector. Similarly, when attachment arises in us, we feel as if it is bringing a gift to us. So we kind of willingly embrace them, and in this way, we give them free rein within our mind, and without any attempt to bring in or introduce any antidotes against them. So it is in this way, Shantideva explains that they wreak havoc within us.
That digital, 수소수부터 tum벌을 그 댄잖아, 탐제편다 대잖아, 유무는 댄 지시는 내가 체스.
So we'll then read stanza 33, which reads, "Everyone becomes favorably disposed when tended with kindness, but when these afflictions are honored, they bring about suffering all the more." So therefore, and then we read in stanza 44,
나는 색도 세주당 나가고 짜장라이 나보고도 유무배 잘한다고 미쳐.
So Shantideva writes that, "Let my entrails ooze out and my heads fall off, but by no means shall I bow down to these enemies, the mental afflictions."
유무는 녀부잖아. 유무 뽕토비 그래스. 다 순집이 녀부터 뽕이 녀부서 여배인데 순집이 녀부 뽕토고 말때 뽕이 녀부 때는 유무 자원에 뽕토비 요구 유잖아. 탐에 자고 윤의 중요한 유신다도 내시 용수네 누버 때네 때네 친도 유무 저주서던 드라마.
So then in stanza 45, Shantideva explains that if you apply the right antidotes against the afflictions can be removed and eliminated. So when we talk about antidotes, there are different types of antidotes, some of which operate more in the function of suppressing, but some are antidotes that are capable of actually eliminating them. So if we are able to apply an eliminating antidote, then Shantideva was pointing out, actually afflictions are something that we can eliminate. So he writes in stanza 45, "Even if exiled, an external enemy may acquire a residence and followers in another country, whence he returns with his full strength. But there is no such course for the enemy, which are the afflictions."
저선 유무디 시르고 밑방고 그랬어. 다기 일에 유무배 가서 그게 다저 때문인지 유무배 싸워 때문인지 랑기 규례 봐 세리는 친제 수용하여 말했어.
So Shantideva is explaining that the afflictions in general, and particularly the root affliction, which is the delusion that grasp at the true existence of all phenomena, once we eliminate this, once we remove it, then there is no possibility for it to ever arise in our mind. So one can eliminate it.
단 용몽기 어느 순집의 연보 뽀인 연보 담에도 싫어 그래서 공부를 쓰려나 유무 남니 유는면에 왕소라 반함이 셔서기 단 유무 사대 너버칭의 유무디 고라 가와도가 그뭐 그러지래 딱부자는 이 말이죠.
So then in stanza 47, Shantideva then presents what kind of antidotes that one can apply to really eliminate these afflictions. And here he's presenting the wisdom of emptiness. So he writes, mental afflictions do not exist in sense objects, nor in the sense faculties, nor in the space in between, nor anywhere else. Then where do they exist and agitate the whole world? This is an illusion only. Liberate your fearing heart and cultivate perseverance for the sake of wisdom. Why would you torture yourself in hells for no reason? So Shantideva was explaining that, once if you examine, where the afflictions reside, whether it is in the objects themselves, whether it is in the sense faculties that give rise to the perceptions and so on, then you will come to recognize that there is no inherently existing afflictions and their objects. So in this way, one will be able to cultivate the wisdom that will act as an antidote against these afflictions. So, and this reference to illusion-like quality is to say that then the question may be, in that case, since afflictions cannot be found when critically searched in that manner, does that mean the afflictions do not exist at all? Shantideva's response is, no, they do exist, but in the manner of an illusion. So with that, the reading of the chapter on heedfulness is completed.
So, now follow it.
Osa shi mbeji yoji menona rirani ji ninde gemande sanje shi no mende mewa ye drogu namda shi no juwa juwa ye nama guru rana menda niya daya